Good afternoon or good morning if you're on the West Coast or in Hawaii. And welcome to our first ever Tech Home Builder webcast. We're launching here in the midst of the coronavirus with remote access by all and hoping to kick this series off in style. I am like I said, this is the first ever of our webcast, and I did want to just take a minute. First of all, I am John Galante. I'm the president of AE Ventures and been working in this builder space since about 2001 with the Tech Home Builder brand. And I am just wanted to lay out some of the things that I'm hoping will happen in this webcast, and it's probably going to be developing over time. But I'm hoping to produce a series here, and for now we're focusing on weekly webcasts. And these are some of the ideas that I want to see come to life in the webcast. Of course, we want this to be informative. This niche of technology and the home builder has tons of information to be provided, and if that wasn't at the top of the list, we'd be doing a disservice to anyone who wants to view it. We don't want it to be just information, though. We want ideas, concepts that maybe haven't been applied, creative thinking that puts together information and gives us a path to something that's exciting and productive. Intimate in that I'm hoping that can have conversations that have the guard down and share negatives and positives, and where folks can puzzle out loud, interactive for sure, inspiring. Hopefully there are going to be ideas that you take away from this that you want to put to work in your business. We're going to try to have fun. That's one of my credos in life, in work, is that if there aren't a lot of laughs happening along the way, there's something wrong. Want it to be entertaining and lively. So those are some of the concepts and values that I'm hoping we can see come to life here in the webcast series. And I want to talk a little bit about the session we have lined up for you today and these great inaugural guests or co-presenters that we have lined up for the session. So our topic is Home Tech Merchandising 101. And our purpose for this session is to introduce some key concepts on home tech merchandising and to help builders and their trade partners, and those trade partners could be integrators or electrical or mechanical subcontractors, but we want to help you get started with merchandising as a concept. And if you're already somewhere down the road with merchandising, maybe we've got some ideas for you that will help you improve your planning. In terms of the flow of the session, it is first definitional. What is merchandising planning and why is it important? Some ideas on how to do it. Then I'll turn to our presenters for some real world examples from the field of where they've seen good merchandising planning in action and had good results from it. And then I also want to talk about the Tech Home Builder Merchandising and Marketing Guide, which we introduced this week, and why that might be something that's worth a download on your computer. No money, just download. So again, presenters for today, I am John Galante. I'm president of AE Ventures. Look, I've been in this space since I have to say the mid 80s, working on trying to get my picture to go bigger here, and I don't know how to do that. Let's see. There. This is me. Hi. I've been working in this space since 1986 when I went to work for Reed Exhibition Companies with the international security conferences. So my entrance into this space was via the electronic security field, but I've also had stints with the Security Industry Association, which is a trade association at the manufacturer level for electronic security, with what is now called the Consumer Technology Association, which was EIA, CEMA, and a lot of other acronyms while I was there in the mid to late 90s, and then to EH Publishing, where I started actually as the editor of CE Pro magazine, and then led the event group there. And then in 2008, Nancy Franco and myself founded AE Ventures, and we've been focusing on that for a little more than a dozen years now. So, that's my background. I like to say I didn't get started on the ground floor in the smart home space. I got started when they were pouring the foundation, when the products didn't work, when it was a bunch of pipe dreams that people were smoking, and now here we are, and this has become a major American and worldwide success story and major business stream. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and there's still a long way to go, and especially a long way to go to help builders to optimize the situation. My guests today are Brett Jacob and Joe Lautner, and both great guys, both with wonderful experience, almost as long and tortured as mine. But I'm going to turn it over to each of them to give a little bit of an intro for themselves. Brett, why don't you start?
Happy to do so. Thanks, John. Well, I have been in this industry also for a very long time, so my journey is a long one. Starting out in retail audio in the 70s, followed by a formal education in pro audio via the U.S. Army, and then had the privilege of working for, I would say, some of the best low voltage system contractors in the Seattle market. And I was very fortunate to have been involved with some very high profile and iconic projects in the Pacific Northwest. And when one of those organizations faltered financially, it ultimately led to the startup of my own integration business. And 7 years later, I found myself kind of on the other side of the country working for Elan. And 18 years later, I'm still here and having a ball. Of course, along the way, Elan was acquired by Nortech. And after filling some sales and sales management roles about, I'd say 3.5 years ago, someone I know asked if I would like to fill a new business development role, primarily working with home builders and developers. And that's how I found myself in my current position. So at Nortech Control, I'm the Director of Builder Services. I manage 4 separate branded builder programs that each kind of address individual segments of the construction industry, as well as the different capabilities and price points specifically in the new home market.
Cool. Thank you for that. So someone he knows might be JWL, Joe Lautner. Give us a little rundown on your background.
Thanks, John, and great to be here with both you and Brett. Appreciate the opportunity. I guess I'm the rookie here. I got into the connected home space in 2002.
That's saying something.
Yeah. And we helped launch one of the first IP-based open standards home control platforms. And back then, this was before iPhones, we were looking at the promise that home networks and the internet had for remote access to the home, integrating security, climate, lighting, audio, video, irrigation, pool, spa, really, really cool cutting edge stuff at the time. And
what about that toaster application? That's a big one. You missed that.
That was the promise back then.
Pre-filled toaster.
Yeah. So
stale bread,
was really
freshly toasted for you in the morning. Great concept.
Yeah.
Sorry, bitter. Little bitter.
What was cool is a lot of these systems were connecting in sort of proprietary ways, but more and more systems were coming with Ethernet ports and potentially connecting wirelessly. So we took advantage of that. That technology is still going strong today. And over the course of the 15 years, I've worked primarily on the manufacturer side, holding senior roles in product management, marketing, sales, strategy development. Focused a lot on the builder channel, designers, architects, both on production side and on custom side, and actually had some interesting experience living through two builder downturns back in '07 time, and then again sort of later, and seeing how technology was used both in good times and bad. So happy to be here. Thanks again, John.
Thanks for coming. So just a couple of quick questions to both of you, and I'll answer it as well. What is it, Brett, you can go first. What do you really dig about this space, and what is it that frustrates you?
Well, I love collaborating with our dealers. That's something that I've always enjoyed doing. It's probably one reason why I've been with Elan for so long, is just being able to work with world-class integrators and help with their projects and get visibility on their projects. The one thing that I found is that integrators are really great at installing systems, designing systems, making their customers happy ultimately, but there are some things that are missing that they just really are not in a position to deliver. And so that's the thing that excites me with our program, is we're able to enhance what integrators do for builders and give them a more well-rounded presentation.
Cool. Joe, how about you?
Well, when we started back in '02, some of the things that I think were of the promise were how technology could help people. It could also enhance and be fun and all that. And watching the technology become more mainstream, hitting a broader part of the market, has been really exciting. I love how certain things like the applications are extending into adaptive active aging, and also following along developments and trends in telehealth, energy management, renewable energy, and healthy home. All of things that are definitely under that connected home umbrella.
Cool. And I would say the thing that I dig about this space the most is the complexity. I'm a sucker for complexity. I want something that I need to think about, and from a lot of different angles to try to figure out what the solution is. And when you talk about the broad taxonomy of products in the home tech space and this industry ecosystem with all the different levels of it, that's a complex animal. And so it's
so John, are you why the technology has been so complicated all those years?
I'm not saying that the tech. I'm saying it's a complicated industry structure, and I dig that. And I like playing the Marco Polo role and try to bring some message from a sector to another sector, and that could be at different levels of the supply chain or across the horizon of technology. So that's what's cool. The thing that always annoys me is we go too slow. I want to go fast.
Right.
I'd like to say Ricky Bobby is on our board of directors. Ricky Bobby will keynote at an AE Ventures event at some point because we want to go fast. All right. Off the stove.
I look forward to it.
Let's see. That's another thing that's going to happen on these webcasts if they're any good. I am going to do some rants and get Lewis Black, get on the soapbox from time to time. So humor me, okay? All right, here we go with our substance. So I don't like this interface all that much. Let's see, because it doesn't show me my whole slide. Okay, so I was Jesuit educated, and the Jesuits are always big on define your terms for starters. So we're going to define what merchandising is here from the get-go, and as we were developing this session, it actually came up as an issue. So what we're talking about here in the way of merchandising is this practice of selecting the products that you want to offer to consumers and how do you organize them, package them, and present them in such a way that you're going to maximize sales. So that's when we say merchandising, that's the concept, and it is applied to this universe of technology. What we're not covering, which is very important and is a topic that we'll definitely want to get into when we start talking marketing in this webcast series, and I might have these two gentlemen back for that webcast when we get there, but it's not visual merchandising. That's visual merchandising is how do you set those end caps up? You know, what sort of language or multimedia tools are you going to put alongside merchandise to get it to sell? How are you going to structure the traffic flows? You know, Paco Underhill Paco Underhill, why we buy sort of stuff. That's not what we're going to discuss today, but I'm sure we'll get there when we start talking about tech options and options technology at some point. So merchandising as in assortment, planning, and packaging, not visual merchandising. So the other thing I wanted to get through in this slide is it kind of goes to why this is our kickoff webcast and why the guide that we'll be talking about, the merchandising and marketing guide, is first on our list of Big Rock content. Is it's key to everything that's downstream. It is ideally happening at the very beginning, your very beginning conception. And if it doesn't, if you don't do this merchandising planning early in the game, you're going to have under-optimized situations in every step of the process going forward. So definition of what we're talking about and just a quick hit on the importance of it taking place early in the game. So even though we were worried that merchandising wasn't necessarily a well understood concept in the home building industry, we typically would associate it more with retailing. We did some research on this a few months ago, and it seemed to be resonating or understood in the market. And I thought this would be interesting to see, you know, kind of what the status is. And we looked at builders doing 50 or more homes a year and builders smaller than that. And, you know, somewhere between a quarter and a third have a documented plan. And then, you know, another 60% or so are working on it, and we actually have finer detail on how quickly they're planning to work on that. And then there's, you know, some folks with their head in the sand or who don't believe technology is an important feature set, who have no plans to do anything there. But I thought this was interesting when we saw this data point a few months ago that, you know, there's a decent level of adoption here and a much more on the way. Guys, do you have any comments on that? All right.
Well, just a couple points. You know, I think the way you've defined it is important because for years, a lot of the products, connected products, IoT products, have come to market well featured, but they didn't necessarily connect with each other. And interoperability is a big promise of the smart home. That's things playing off of each other. Part of the reason is that there's a lack of standards, and certainly there's development on standards coming along, but there are systems out there that do integrate the things in the home, and that's really quite valuable. So having a good merchandising plan, which includes picking products that work together and, you know, can add that added value, that 1 + 1 = 3 benefit is really important. Also, there's a couple of you know, important topics around security and privacy that I think all have to be assessed. A master plan needs to be developed. This is a roadmap for builders and developers to develop. And I think your guide does a great job laying out that roadmap for what to do to develop a compelling home technology offering or strategy. It also, I think what you include, I think on page 8, you've got all the categories, and some of which may not be thought of under a smart home package, like appliances, kitchens, home health, and new work and learn from home technologies. And it also lays out a holistic approach, so that you start with the marketing of the packages and you think about how to differentiate your development with it. And hands all the way through to how you train your salespeople and the design center team and provide, how are you going to support these systems once the homeowner moves in? And I think the guide is helpful certainly for builders, but also smart home product manufacturers and tradespeople who are involved on a growing basis with the connected home.
Cool. Thank you. Let's keep going here. So here are some, there are about 20 to 25 pages in the guide dedicated to these merchandising concepts, but I thought I would try to boil down in the time we have today, just a few of the key concepts. And I'll walk through each of these in a little more detail in the subsequent slides. So number one is, and I talked about the time frame being early, but it's early on that you need to establish your tech team, and it's to be multidisciplinary in nature. And this is starting at this level of strategy, and I'll get into it. What is your strategic intent with tech? And then kind of at the high level, assortments and merchandising concepts. So that is something that we envision for a wholly in-house strategy team. And then we add to that team some of the key players on the manufacturing side, and it is the platform providers like an Elan that tie together so many product categories and provide the user interface, and some other subsystems that do similar work maybe in a more of a vertical subsystem category. Does those level players, plus potentially an integrator who's performing a similar sort of across the board connectivity service for the builder, that they are brought into the process relatively early on and involved in developing a merchandising plan. And then the other key concepts here are some merchandising perspectives or tool sets that can help folks ideate around what their assortments are going to be and what the systems of organization should be. The advice to keep touching back to strategic intent to make sure you don't get off course with what your goals were for technology. And then, of course, making it formal, putting it in writing, having refresh cycles, providing appropriate handoffs and cascading to other functional areas so it can be implemented. So those are a few of the key concepts that we're going to cover quickly, and then we'll get to more real world feedback from Brett and Joe. So just to give a little more detail on these two teams. Ultimately, tech is still it's still a shiny object, right? Especially in new construction, it's a shiny object that come into play here in the last 10 years in terms of mainstream understanding and interest in it. So, part of this is you have to have marketing and sales involved as a multidisciplinary team, because it's about increasing, I think in many cases, it's about increasing appeal to buyers of almost every sort. So marketing sales needs to be in the mix. Obviously, purchasing and design and options will need to be in the mix. and construction and operations for feasibility of including, products in the mix. Certainly, as you get, later into the game and want to understand what can be done at the job site. So, at any rate, I mean, I think it's most of the functional areas should have some representation with, especially for companies that are newer in the game, that marketing and sales and customer strategy piece should certainly be well represented in Team 1. Team 2 is going to include those additional trade partners. Guys, I mean, what do you think about this conceptually? Multidisciplinary internal team to set overall strategy, and then bringing in some of the other key players from the tech industry to flesh it out.
Yeah, I think it's wise to develop that internal team and have everybody on the same page, understanding what the priorities are. We have always kind of been of the mindset that if we can get in front of a sales and marketing person with the home builder, that they will be our proactive for us and help guide that message through. And whereas people in the purchasing department might be a little more they're watching their budget, they don't want to make that expenditure. So
where's the rebate?
That's not
where's
always
the rebate.
You got it. Where's the rebate? But that's not always necessarily true. We've had some great sponsors, executives in organizations that came from the purchasing department, and they're the ones who actually promoted it through into the marketing and promoted it inside the marketing department as well.
Brett, would you say that the larger companies that have a little more of departments, if they start with procurement, they go right to price, and someone says we need a smart thermostat, and now they're choosing their product on parameters that don't have to do with marketability or interoperability, and that provides or proposes challenges. If you start with marketing, you're talking about lifestyle of the buyer, you're talking about features for the target audience you're building the development for, and you also want to include operations. How are you going to deploy this, right? So that, how often have you seen tech home options on a spreadsheet, and they turn around, they hand the spreadsheet to the homeowner and go, what do you want? And it's a line item, it's a part number, and you go, well, what is it? There's no marketing, there's no benefits, and
people don't shop by spreadsheet.
Yeah, and then you go after the buyers have a place. They're important in the role. They need to set the terms and all, but yeah, got to start with marketing.
Yep.
Very good. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, so diving a little bit more deeply into this idea of strategic intent. I don't know how legible this is on the screen, but I think that these slides are going to be downloadable. But this is one of these tool sets from the guide. We've actually engineered a full agenda for a strategic intent, kind of establishment or planning meeting. And here's a little more detail about what we mean by strategic intent. It sounds like a fancy Harvard MBA term. I tried to break it into, there's nothing wrong with Harvard MBAs, by the way. My son is a Harvard MBA, and I applaud them. But they deserve a pot shot every now and then, just like everybody. So here's, in item 5 here, a few buckets that I think, help on determining the strategic intent. So the first big bucket is customer appeal. And this goes back to this idea that tech is a shiny object. It's something that is going to be attractive, put you into a better position with home buyers of these sorts. So, what are we trying to do with tech from a customer appeal standpoint? You can look at that demographically, you could look at that psychographically, for sure. Item 2, very important, because we're in America and we have a free enterprise system. It's called competition. What is tech going to do for you competitively? Is that one of the reasons you're doing this, is to be ahead of your competitors? And I think it's really important for builders to define competitors as not just other builders, but as the resale home market too. When you start saying, can I compete more strongly for that home buyer versus resale homes with technology, it's going to percolate a whole different set of ideas and really a more robust energy behind tech than if you're strictly talking about builder versus builder. And then the third item, which is, after we think about competition and customers, is we got to figure out how does this all add up for the business, so.
Yeah.
I mean, are we trying to make a lot more money or some more money on this? Are we trying to sell homes more quickly, which ends up being more money earlier in the cycle? So those business factors, need to be considered. And I think if you walk through those three dimensions, you're going to have a good sense of your strategic intent. And then as you start to ideate packages, et cetera, you go back to this and say, are we on track with what we have intended to do? So I'll throw that open for commentary, criticism, etc. from the guys. Any comments? Does it make sense?
Yeah, well, yes. You've got to think about the packages and how you're going to communicate them and how you're going to blend and overlay them on top of the rest of the marketing campaign, looking at tech forward messaging, and making so in say advertising to attract more buyers. Ultimately, the builder wants to sell homes, right? Everything else is noise. And how are you going to use this technology to differentiate your development, add features to attract more buyers and close more homes? The plan also has to include how you're going to train and coach the people selling the homes on the front line, as well as the design center team on how to talk about the technology. Brett, how many times have you walked into a model home and the sales agent goes, yeah, there's some technology over here, but I don't know how it works. I mean, the builder makes all this investment to put it in a model home and their frontline people don't understand it, right? That's poor merchandising.
So Joe, save that for the marketing webcast, okay?
Well, it's part of the plan. It's got to be part of the plan.
Well, it's yeah. And Brett, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, just for you to go to the level of detail to provide an agenda for a meeting, for a hypothetical meeting, it's awesome. I mean, it's because look, merchandising planning is one of the most critical processes where we try to assist home builders, and product selection is so important to the success of the builder's implementation of technology. And your tech home builder merchandising and marketing guide, this is an example of how detailed it gets. And it's something I and my team will definitely utilize both as a reference, but as a guide when we're speaking with builders, because I think you and your team have done a great job in putting these kinds of details together.
Thank you. I don't know if my staff would agree with the fact that my attention to detail is always positive. I tend to be a little bit control freakish, but so be it. All right, let's go. And here is next up is after you've established that strategic intent, this is where we go with team 2, right? Including platform providers, potentially integrator as well. And we are, here's again another agenda for you to work with to, get more granular about your packaging, and also pricing is part of this mix for sure. You've got to figure out whether you're going to have offers that are perceived to be valuable by the buyer, right? And so there's got to be some solid research done to say, does that feature set, especially on the option side of things, priced at what it is that going to be acceptable to the consumer? Now you can have a margin versus that product uninstalled available on the internet, but it can't be 3x, right, or 5x, or you're just, you're going to run into a lot of difficulties. So we also have some pricing concepts that we lay out that can be applied to some of the more granular thinking about developing these merchandise. I'm going to keep going because we're going too slow. This is a draft for you of, what the plan would constitute. So here's an outline. I'm a believer, we've said it way too much the last 2 months, is just like, I'm a believer in straw men, right? If you go to meetings and you have, a blank to fill, it's really hard to fill a blank. If somebody will just take the risk and do the work to lay a straw man out that can be chopped up, you tend to go faster and have better results. So that's all we tried to do here with this outline, is like, kill sections of this if you want, or add sections to it, but it's a starting point so you don't have a blank paper staring you in the face. Okay? And so there's a lot of time in the guide that talks about what I call merchandising perspectives. And these are tool sets that help you think about the market and the customer and your system of organizing. So there's probably 15, but there's 4 that we're working with, or at least that we've been talking about the last 3 or 4 years. Number 1 on the list, and I'm not sure that it's the greatest perspective from a consumer standpoint, but this product taxonomy is really important to think holistically and broadly about tech. To get over the 30-year hangover that tech in a home is just the smart home security piece, right? Just home automation and security. That is an important piece. That is a hot piece. In many ways, that is the heart of the system, the heart and the brains of the system. But there's so much technology and so many other buckets that can be considered. This taxonomy really helps you think more broadly about your opportunities and get into some benefit streams and experiential streams for the consumer that are different and maybe more appealing to certain demographics. Taxonomies, one of the perspectives, helps you think comprehensively. Good way to present to a tech-forward buyer, by the way. If you got a mail-driven process where somebody is a tech head, they want the taxonomy to shop with, right? Room by room, or space by space, if we consider the great outdoors, is, I think that's an easy one that's not really done as commonly as you would expect. And I think a lot of home buyers shop room by room, and you can really ideate about what the product and feature sets and the applications are in rooms based on what typically happens in rooms. That's another way to think through your assortments. Is like, let's go from the front, let's go from not the front door, let's go from the driveway to the backyard, through the house, up and down, and figure out where technology can enhance and provide great value. So that's another perspective that you can ideate around. Central benefits is, is kind of boiling this stuff down to, what a consumer would value. Now, we have been talking about 6 central benefits for 3 or 4 years, and we've just added a 7th, which is productive. So it's smart, safe, connected, green, healthy, entertaining, and now productive, speaking to the whole work from home um, um, interest level that's rising with work from home, learn from home. So productive has been added to the central benefit set. And then our final merchandising perspective, and it's a little tricky, is lifestyle. So it's like, it's activities that folks pursue, whether that's like music lover or movie lover or easy, ease and convenience. We've got, a set of lifestyle perspectives. What's a little tricky there is some people don't want to be pigeonholed into a type, and so you can create a turnoff if you take it to an extreme at the marketing and sales level. So that's a little bit of a tricky set of perspectives, but some builders think in terms of personas in their marketing, and that might be a useful tool set for them to ideate on technology. So that's a whole bunch of blathering for me. I welcome commentary and elaboration from the guys. Go for it. Brett.
Well, it expands on what we talk, and I know that we're going to get into our concept of the standard, which is the products that a builder would choose to include in the home, in the purchase price of the home, and then the options that are layered on top of that. And we look at all four of those areas, whether it's the taxonomy, the room by room. Do we present a whole house audio solution for the builder that gives them 4, 6, 8 rooms of audio, or do we let them sell one room at a time? And then of course central benefits are things that HVAC systems are a centralized benefit, right? Remote access to the home would be a centralized benefit, but it's in line with what we go to our builders with.
Good.
I think the only thing to echo on that is I think some of the personas and demographics you should discuss up front, and you'll have features that'll be appropriate for different age groups, different family makeups. Those are important, and the room by room is important so that builders and architects have to think about their spaces of how people are going to live in them, whether they're going to watch TV in that room, work or learn in that room. How does it affect lighting? And if you think about the use cases of the space, then you can layer the technology on top of those use cases. Pretty basic.
Thank you. Okay, so guys, I want to get to you because I've been doing too much talking and my mouth's getting dry. And let's talk to Brett first. And Brett, so you and I prepped a little bit for this segment, and what I'm really hoping you'll focus on, and we really haven't discussed it at all to date, is the idea of standard and optional, right? Because, and you wouldn't, if you were thinking about merchandising as a retailer, you wouldn't think about a standard. But that is part of the merchandising process. It's a critical part, which is what is the stuff that's going to be there on a standard basis? And in many respects, that is enabling everything else to be sold. So, I'd love for you to give an example or two, or speak in principle to the idea of standard plus options. What should that standard constitute, and how does it enable good flow through for option sales and ultimately home buyer satisfaction?
Sure. Well, the selection of the standard is the most important part of the merchandise planning process, and it's for several reasons. So defining the standard as what technology package is the home builder going to provide to their buyers that is included in the price of their home. Without the standard, we have no foundation for the buyer to layer on additional functionality. And we try to stay away from a project where a builder would like to simply build maybe a smart home ready house where the low voltage wiring may be in place, or even where a hub or a controller only is provided, but without any built-in functionality. That approach doesn't really provide any value to the buyer. So
can I be less politically correct? That's just a cop-out. It's a total punt. It might have been appropriate in 2003 when none of the active component stuff worked and nobody cared about it, but it was really a total punt to just put infrastructure in at this point.
Right.
That's a differentiator. It's oh my gosh, it's an internet ready home. Give me a break. So
yeah. Well, so the
I'll give you a
functionality,
little bit of the politically incorrect foundation, but you've got to have some active benefit delivered by the standard and not just an enablement of some potential, right?
that is the functionality, yes, of that standard. And so first, a well thought out standard gives that particular home builder a significant competitive advantage. Essentially, we have the best tech story of any home builder in our class in our market. And that's always our goal. And if it's done right, it will entice potential buyers and then ultimately drive more sales. So from a marketing standpoint, the standard is a vital thing, but it's also important for builders because that standard is the foundation that, if done well and properly planned for, it gives the builder this awesome ability to offer lifestyle enhancing options that layer on top and actually increase the buyer's value of that standard that they already purchased.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Brett, that it seems like you've arrived there without necessarily the builders all having thought it through upfront as strategic intent, but this idea that it ideally, or it almost always should enable at that moment some sort of competitive advantage versus other builders. It's interesting that so many of the clients that your hero customers have gotten to that mindset. That is a strategic intent, right? It's like they've lifted that competitive factor and said, we're going to use tech to have a positive point of differentiation versus competitive builder.
I agree.
Joe, you had something you're going to add?
I was just going to ask Brett how a well-featured standard affects the take rate of the options. Because if the builder is going to invest in the standard and maybe make some money back or make profit on the options, how do those two interact with each other?
Yeah, that's a great thing. I think we have a decent take rate on audio video because the audio system interacts with the doorbell, so you can hear the door chime through the speakers. That's an example of the 1 + 1 = 3. The standard video doorbell that we include in the home now can work through the intercom system and play the door chime through the speakers and allow intercom functionality utilizing the audio system. So that would be an example, I would think.
So give us a little bit of a commercial, Brett, on the stuff that I've got on the screen here. I mean, a lot of this is really, kind of more to our marketing discussion that will be subsequent. But obviously, I'm looking at these spreads here where you guys have kind of pre-engineered assortments, full-blown solutions and packages. And I'm sure you're tweaking these things for various builders, but it's great to have a starting point. And then, you guys have taken it the next step of not just pulling those assortments together, but having, a starting point from a marketing perspective as well.
Right. Well, when it comes to product selection, we pay attention to consumer demands for smart home products, and we suggest that the builder offer those in their standard package. So all of our programs have very similar recommended standards. So, and they apply to both production builders or luxury or custom builders. And it's an enterprise grade Wi-Fi, a controller or a hub. And then for functionality, the top 3 most consumer requested devices would be a video doorbell, a connected or a smart thermostat, and some lighting control. And if all those things are all controlled through a single, easy to use interface, then that's the thing that sets it apart, the builder apart. That standard is always flexible, right? So some builders still feel very strongly about including a security panel in their homes, for example. So we can certainly accommodate that. And some people would add, luxury home builders will often expand on that offering by adding maybe a half dozen smart light switches or an intelligent touch panel, things like that. But that leads to the selection and the creation of these lifestyle option packages that gives the home buyer an opportunity to personalize their new home through technology. And just like other options in other categories, it gives the home builder an easy way to monetize the offering of those products and those packages. So through the collaboration process with the builder, we identify which lifestyle benefits these packages can deliver, and then we match them with the demographics of their typical buyer, which kind of gets back to you earlier.
I mean, and what happens if a builder does punt? If they do cop out? If it's just like a structured wiring panel in the basement and you multimedia jack in, you know, the home office and the master suite? I mean, what do they? You could articulate a whole set of options and upgrades, but do you get anywhere on them without a standard that shows some active benefit and functionality?
Yeah, in our experience, no. And that's why we try to stay away from those projects.
Yeah. Very good. All right, Mr. Lautner. So, you know, I think it's interesting. I wrote up this gobbledygook here. I don't know whether I'm going to read it or not, but your most recent experiences with a luxury integrator. And I think, you know, the concept of merchandising and even this standards versus option, everybody, it seems to evaporate in their mindset when they think about a luxury custom builder, because theoretically it's like, you know, what do you want to do? Your wish is my command. But I think the reality is every builder is going to start with a comfort zone of standard stuff in a comfort zone of packages of any sort, whether it's decorating or what have you, that they really want to review in detail with the buyer. And they're not just a blank slate that's written on by that home buyer. So, and I think in the application we're going to, or the opportunity that we're going to talk about here, it's a luxury, a small exclusive luxury community with a few units, but in many ways, it commanded the same sort of standard merchandising and options path merchandising that we'd associate with a production or semi-custom home. So that's my setup for you. Just take it where you want.
Well, it's spot on, John. I think the process and particularly the guide will have value whether you're doing custom homes, semi-custom homes, your developer of MDUs or production homes, because all the things have to be thought through. All the same things have to be thought through. You know, the difference between a move-up home and a luxury home is the number of light switches and the designer aesthetics of the light switch. You know, the move-up home might have a light switch that's under $50, and the luxury home might have a light switch that's $300 to $500, right? It's all on based on that demographic. So it applies across all the boards. It's all about proper planning, prior planning, right, and execution. This project was a project in the suburbs of Boston, 20 units, you know, $1,000 a foot and up for the homes. And the developer and the builder all had experience with custom home technologies, not all good. And they knew that if they let the homeowners kind of lead the conversation, everyone brought their own players in, that it would cause problems. It would cause problems with the schedule and all that. So they were upfront about saying, we want something smooth. We also know, based on our target market, that these folks are going to want these amenities. So we want to be able to smooth that path out. I think across the board, buyers want to be led, right? They want to know that you've thought through this and that you're giving them a nice soft place to land with all the things that they want. And they really welcome direction. You know, yeah, you've got the crazies out there that come in and, you know, they want to do everything bleeding edge, which won't work very well. But they also, by coming in with the right products, you'll give a great solution. So the conversation started, you know, before groundbreaking, and it started with the marketing people, but also the operations. This was an empty nester 55 and plus development. So the you know, they wanted a smooth plan. They wanted to keep things on schedule, And who are the buyers? Well, high net worth people, empty nesters, 55 plus. They'd have family visits. Maybe they go south in the winter. So you wanted to look at a high focus on aesthetics. So the window treatments and the lighting technology had to meet that designer requirements. Had to be simple. Not saying that old people can't run technology, but as you get more senior, eyesight, usability, desire to interact with this, all was going to be something that we considered in the design. Entertainment. What did the homeowners want? What did their grandkids want? Right? These are all the discussions that we had up front to help design the system. Use cases like remotely locating thermostats. What a great aesthetic value, right? You don't have to see it on the wall. No designer says, it looks good there, a thermostat. However, maybe more senior people want that comfort of that traditional control, or guests and visitors might want that control. So there was discussions around that, how people would use it. You go away for the winter, how are you going to keep track of your place? What are the technologies that allow you to be there when you're not? Look at the climate, manage the climate, manage and access to the place, letting people in and out, service people, cleaning people, all things that were discussed up front while we developed.
How did those discussions go, Joe? I mean, who were those discussions with? Is it like a 3-hour brainstorming meeting, or is somebody the secretary and taking all this stuff down? How does it get translated into requirements? It's almost like a product development meeting in a manufacturer, right? It's like, let's articulate all these requirements. Somebody's got to form that into a whole. What happened? Or was it not that formal?
Well, you have to look at it in two ways. If you work with someone like Brett, or you work with an Elan dealer, or the group that we were Elan dealers at the time, but when you present, it's part of your sales pitch. Do you understand how to deploy technology? So part of it is showing that you know what the right questions are to ask. And at the same time, you're inspiring the builders to think about these things maybe differently than they had before. So it's partly leading all those steps through. You have to lead those steps through your merchandising guide, because nobody really has that thought process that I've met when you walk in. They all have their own idea based on personal interest, past experience. I like music. I like remote home control. They all have their own ideas about developing or designing a system for them. They have to step out of that and think about their target audience. We've always, when you tell integrators, don't design with your own wallet. The people that you're selling to have different budgets, and if they say they want to spend X and you deliver them X, they're not going to be happy. You deliver something that's 2X, and now you're really meeting what they want. So it's the same thing with the builders. You have to get them to step back, think about the buyers, and then layer on top of brands and packages on top of it. And that all has to happen up front.
Cool. Well, I also like in your conversation how aesthetics became that. This gets us back to this strategic intent feeding through into the product assortments, right? If you decide, or if you guys arrive together at the fact that the aesthetics need to be, at a very high level, then you got to keep coming back to that, right? Because we could come up with a feature set or an application, but if it's disqualifying based on aesthetics, it ain't going to fly. So it's interesting that stream came through.
Yeah.
Well, like shading products, you can put a battery operated shade that's noisy, and you have to change the batteries. And if you've got a floor to ceiling window and it's 15 feet in the air, it becomes a hassle. Pre-wire for it, put a pocket in the ceiling. Those are the things that buyers who are spending over $1,000 a square foot expect. And I can give you countless examples of luxury high-rise buildings where the developer didn't think about it, and the buyers came in and had very little option to personalize. You're not spending that much money and wanting somebody else's thoughts and designs. You want to personalize it. And so all of that is how, I think that a good conversation with a builder and a developer should start. And, and then, it includes how to take advantage of it. What Brett was saying about, glorify it, celebrate it, get it out front. Here, I'm giving you a home that is going to be the home you want. And that's why you want to buy my development. Part of what should be done too is look at the competition. What are the others doing around you? And then being smart about the marketing and, highlight what you're offering, not talking about the other developments, but highlight what makes your development unique. And a good merchandising plan will identify that up front and then allow you to bake it into all the marketing and the touch points of the prospective buyers.
Great. Guys, I think we have, our moment has arrived. We are actually well beyond what we initially thought we would do, but we're just around the 1 hour mark. We have, and thanks so much for your comments. And I would say, you guys are giving us credit for this, writing this guide, but we all kind of co-wrote it together, right? On the journey that we've been on together the last 3 or 4 years, trying to understand what are the issues and how can we help builders, partner with the technology industry better. So appreciate your contributions with word from the field over the many years that fed into this. Anyway, I do hope we'll have a good contingent of the folks on this webcast get the guide. It is not only the merchandising piece that we focused on, but there's marketing included in there as well. You got the sample agendas, you've got outlines for the reports. We've got step-by-step instructions on stuff like how to run the meeting, who should be in charge. It's really control freak level stuff that you could throw away or you could follow it, okay? It is sponsored by Nortec Security and Control and Elan. And they didn't bias any of the content. They just stuck an ad in there. And so it's not like written to sell you an Elan home. And here's the big one. It's all caps. It's free. All you have to do is go download this thing at techhomebuilder.com/resources and give us some information on who you are. And you'll have 46 pages to read while you're confined because of COVID-19. So I want to thank these guys. I want to thank Brett and Nortec for, again, their sponsorship of the guide and, participation over the years in our events and such. And we're about ready to announce our restart campaign on Tech Home Builder Summit Spring, which spring in August in Orlando. And we're excited about figuring out a way to get folks back together in person and talk about all the cool things that we can do with tech to make home buyers happy, help builders, and even address some of these issues arising out of COVID. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you all next Friday.
Just one little touch on the guide. I think anybody, whether you're a builder, manufacturer, or tradesperson, will benefit from something in that guide. So it's while it maybe has a builder audience, I think there's something there for everybody.
I agree.
Thank you. And guys, and here's my phone number and email address if you want to give me a ring or shoot me a note. Thank you so much. And that concludes our session.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, guys. Good seeing you.
Bye-bye.